And welcome to the October 12th, 2021 Committee of Finance of the City Council. With us this evening, committee members present, myself, Councilor Di Natale, Councilors Boschman, Hughes, Walsh, and Zarella. We will begin with a recording of public meetings announcement. I ask anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none, public forum. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to address the committee, they may do so at this time. You may speak on any item appearing on the agenda for not more than 2 minutes. Please stand and state your name and address and the item on which you wish to speak. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak, other than the petitioners? Seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. 162-21, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Community Compact Best Practices Program and the approximate amount of $40,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is for a review and analysis of the city staffing levels in all departments, excluding public safety and school departments. Chief of Staff Patrick Hare.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Hare, the committee a couple of weeks ago held this because we just had some clarifying questions about the motivations of the petition and what it's going to do specifically. I believe one question was, this excludes public safety. There was a question about, does that also include public works? And the other question centered around, why are we excluding public safety in the school department? And a general aim of what we're looking to accomplish too. So those are the questions the committee had a few weeks ago. And I'm sure the committee will ask additional questions once you speak if that didn't cover it, but that's kind of the gist of why we held it, just to get some more clarifying info on this.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor. Councilors, before you tonight is that petition for $40,000. The City of Fitchburg has engaged with the UMass Boston's Donahue Center to look at a staffing study proposal. As you all know, and as we've brought before you in years past during the budget cycle, there are always requests for new positions. One aim of this study looks to impartially look at all of the offices within City Hall, DPW, and does exclude police and fire and schools. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at those divisions, look at their structures, look at their workflow, and identify and through meetings and conversations with department heads and teams, trying to identify, does that department need more staffing individuals? Does it need more hires? Or could they reorder or rework some of their workflow to utilize existing employees in the best way possible? And so it's really just going to be a tool for the mayor to use when he proposes the budget for next year and years following that, in terms of whether or not we need to pick up on any new employees. It's a third-party independent analysis too, so we hope that will provide a bit more reasoning as to why we were proposing certain positions. The reason that it does exclude police and fire is because that there are national standards based around those hiring models and how many employees they should have given the limitations of the city. So we kind of already have a pretty good understanding of what those numbers look like. In schools is just a whole nother, we could do one study in and of itself just for schools. But I do know that Superintendent Jokola, is looking at his hiring practices holistically in a whole host of ways. So I'm sure he'll be proposing something.
Plus, the school committee has the legal jurisdiction over the
staffing and we don't have any oversight
right,
over,
Okay. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I was the one who asked the question about, why are we excluding police and fire? I just want to, first of all, thank you for explaining, but also clarify that it was a genuine inquiry. It wasn't like a, answer for yourself, defend this practice. It was just, I wanted to understand what the reasoning was. And now I do, and I appreciate it. And I'm always in favor of finding better efficiencies for our use of tax dollars. So,
thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. I know that you're looking at, staffing levels and that kind of thing, but are you also going to consider any kind of diversity or racial equity in this review, or is that not part of this review?
This study's particular aim would not answer those kinds of questions for us. But I'm hoping some of the, initial data that we get would be able to help with that. A goal of mine, personally, is that, city government should reflect its constituent base. In conversations with the mayor and our HR team, and knowing, some of the work that the mayor wants to accomplish, I think we'll be able to address those in other ways.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Of course.
Council Boishman.
Now, did I hear you correctly, that you're telling me that on this study here, if they can come back and say to you, you need 50 more people at the DPW, are we going to go out and hire 50 more people?
I think, Counselor, we would accept that recommendation, and we would work with the commissioner to prioritize the hiring and the timeline of which that hiring would get accomplished. Could I tell you that we would go out and hire 50 people? I'd like to think that if we identify that that's where a need is, then that's where we would prioritize. Could I say that we would hire all 50 of them, and would we hire all 50 of them next year? I don't think we'd have the capacity to do that. But we would, the basis of the study is to help give us another tool to look at prioritizing how we should be spending our dollars. In this term, how we should be spending resources for employees. And then we would build a plan off of that to implement those recommendations should the mayor, the department heads, the individual department head that is affected by that, and the council think that that is the right choice to make.
Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe the counselor to my right can verify this. I thought a few years back, probably even before I came on the council, they had a similar study like this, and they made recommendations to the city about hiring practices and different departments. Is that right? But we never followed through on that one either.
Council, I don't believe that we didn't follow through on it. I vaguely recall, so it's been a long time ago, if we did anything like this, it would have been around the economic recession of 2008, when the DOR was threatening receivership on the city. And I do recall my first term on the council, when former Mayor Wong was in office, that there was an independent agency that came in to review the staffing levels and the budgets across the city for cost-efficient measures. That actually had more to do with cost-cutting than it did adequate staffing. So I don't, but even if it did, it's been at least 12 or 13 years since we've had something like that. But I recall at the time, it was driven by the fact that we were in threat of receivership, and so we needed an analysis of all departments to see where we could cut costs, what budgets should be saved, and that was done by an independent body as well, similar to this. It may have even been this organization, I don't recall, but I certainly won't say that it wasn't acted upon. I do recall using that we did use that as a basis for our budgetary decisions for the follow-on years, because we weren't really fully out of that recession until 2013. So, but it's been at least 10 years since we've had any kind of review.
Now, one final question to you. Are they gonna come in, this study that we're doing, gonna show us how we can almost combine departments to say, if there's not enough work here, like they do in manufacturing, they call it a STEM program, where think green, you share resources, so that way there, you can cut down on employment and save $1. Are we gonna be working towards that goal?
So one of the outcomes of this study will be how offices can be more productive with the resources that they have. And I'm sure one of the things that the UMass Boston Center will look at would be is there opportunity for sharing of similar duties? But I don't know if that will be a recommendation of theirs.
All right. If I get any more questions, I can ask you. All right, thank you.
Council
Councilor.
Cirillo?
Thank you. Just to sort of rephrase what you were saying earlier to make sure I'm getting it correctly, would it be correct to say then that the numerical recommendations, at least, that come out of this are going to be in the nature of setting staffing targets to be met as we're able, as opposed to setting actual, staffing allocations for the upcoming budget season.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of factors that will go into the final decision. If they come back and they just say, the mayor's office needs 20 more employees, is that practical? I don't know, right? So we don't have it in the budget. I think all of the department heads will, and we don't have the available desk space. I think a multitude of factors will go into play once we've gotten the final report and we have the recommendations. But yes, I think it would be more akin to target setting and goal settings. Again, if that's what the mayor and the department head, the council feels is an adequate thing. It's not going to be, this staffing study showed that the mayor's office needs to have 20 more employees, so therefore here's the budget for FY23, which includes that in it. I don't know how we'd fund that.
Me either. Thank you. That answers my question.
Of course.
Council Boschman.
My final question, based on what the president said over there. My question is this. This study comes back, and they say to you, or they say to the mayor, we need a person in city auditor, we need a person in treasurer, we need 2 people in the Board of Health, we need 3 people in the building commissioner, but we need 10 people in the DPW. Who's going to rank first on this study?
So I think, Counselor, we would have a discussion, probably starting with the mayor's office, but then going to those affected departments and asking, is this in actuality, what the study recommends? Is that actually what you would need? And then based on those conversations, we would try and set some priorities as to where and who and where and how and when we fund. I can't tell you today that one department would be prioritized over the other because we don't have the results yet.
All right. I just want to make sure I understand this, because you're going to have to deal with me for 2 years. So,
I look forward to it, Counselor.
all right.
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to approve 16221. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
17721, in order that the city of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program Action Grant in the approximate amount of $173,350 for the purpose of said grant, which is to explore ways to mitigate flooding in the Baker Brook Drainage Basin. And there is a lengthy letter here from Acting Commissioner Nick Erickson on this subject. If the committee wants me to read this, I will. If not, I will waive the reading and...
Motion to waive the reading?
Second.
So the reading's being waived. I don't know if the committee has any questions, or Ms. Lamoureux, if you have anything you'd like to speak about. DPW Business Manager is here in Mr. Erickson's place for right now.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and if I don't know, Commissioner or Acting Commissioner Erickson is more than willing to jump on a call with any one of you.
I do have one question.
Council Boschman.
My question to you is, I voted for the first study. I'm going to vote for the second study, but I want to make it very clear to the engineers that are running the program in this city, if you can go back, or probably they're watching, which make John Fitch Highway more modern and more safer for everybody, especially the residents. So which cut out a lot of the curb cuts. I told you today, I'm saying it out loud, the curb cuts have got to go. It's time to modernize John Fitch Highway to make it a lot more safer. So we get places where they can come out the right way and everything else. So that's how I feel, and I'll make a motion that we accept.
I'll second that.
Motion made has been seconded to approve acceptance of the grant. Speaking on the motion, Councilor Zarella.
Just very briefly, I just want to note that unless I'm misunderstanding this grant, it won't actually have anything to do with traffic patterns and road engineering.
Right, that's right, that's right. The only reason why I mentioned it, we voted on it first time, and this is the second part about where we used to be King's Department Store in that area, where it floods out all the time and coming down Baker Brook. that area, am I right, Commissioner? So, and that's the only reason, but I want to make it very clear about curb cuts. That's
Well, let me just read this part of the letter, because it's pertinent to what we're discussing here. During the design phase of the project, it was determined that this will not be enough to completely mitigate the flooding issues along John Fitch Highway. As such, the city needs to look further upstream in the watershed to determine ways to adequately mitigate the flooding issues. The project to be funded through this grant proposes to accomplish exactly that by evaluating flood-prone areas and looking for locations to implement flood control improvements. The improvements will be scored and prioritized according to benefits to environmental justice populations, estimated reductions in urban heat island effect, and other co-benefits to the community. The final products will be a targeted capital improvement plan for identified and assessed public properties and a pilot retrofit program for specific private properties. The feasibility of financing this program through a stormwater and climate resiliency utility will be explored. In future years, the DPW will be seeking additional funding through this grant program and/or other state and federal funding programs to progress the final product toward implementation. So I have a motion made and seconded to accept the grant. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move on to 17821. In order that there be and hereby is transferred from within the sum of $212,000 to be transferred from reserve for other municipal purposes, capital expenses, and credited to police capital expenditures vehicle replacement for the purpose of replacing 4 police vehicles. Chief Martineau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you can see from the letter I submitted to the mayor's office, this is an annual item that I bring to the council for appropriation each year as we replace our fleet. Last year, I did not make that appropriation request because we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID, and we were all asked to tighten our belts a little bit last year, and we spent a little bit of extra money on auto repair last year, but here we are in '21, and I had the need to request vehicles this year. Typically, you see a request from me for 2 vehicles per year. However, this one, because we did skip a year, I'm asking for 4 vehicles. I also like to highlight that we continue to purchase the extended warranty on these vehicles, which is a little costly. However, we've seen an offset in our repair to our vehicles. We've entered into a contract for several years now with Brownell Auto that does all the auto repair to our vehicles. Our fleet consists of roughly 55 vehicles. So we continue to do a good job maintaining our fleet, but to maintain and stay current, it's going to take at least replacing a couple cars a year. We have a front line of vehicles that run 24/7. That consists of 7 vehicles, 6 line cars and a supervisor car. Then, in addition to that, I have a back line of vehicles which consist of 6 cars. We try to set the standards set forth in policing that these first response vehicles don't exceed 100,000 miles. And we've been very successful doing that by replacing 2 a year, keeping them under 100,000 miles, so that we're assuring ourselves that the vehicles that are responding to call after call are the safest vehicles we can provide our police officers. I'm happy to answer any questions as it relates to the fleet at the police station.
Counsel Boschman.
2 questions. Number 1, on the $125,000, if you buy a brand-new car, don't you get 12 months or 2 years or 125,000 miles on a new car?
This is an extended warranty, Counsel.
So that would be 250,000?
What's that?
That would add up to 250?
Nope, this is specifically towards police-rated vehicles. You got to keep in mind the Ford Interceptors that we're buying. This is not the same Ford that you would purchase at Townsend Ford. These have a higher Interceptor package in them, and this is a specific package, warranty package that is related to police vehicles. We have seen significant savings by purchasing this extended warranty, which runs roughly $2,800 per vehicle. But we've seen times in the past where we've had transmissions replaced for free, we've had front ends replaced for free. So we find it to be very advantageous to be proactive and add the extended warranty. Keep in mind we're spending on roughly over $60,000 per vehicle for a brand new Ford Interceptor with the complete IT package along with it.
All right. Now, my second question, and I think it's very important. Since you're coming back to this council almost every year for a replacement of cars, why don't we have a line item in the budget for you to do that, instead of you coming to us and begging us?
Well, that's a great question. 7 years ago, my first year as chief, that's something that I asked Mayor Wong at the time, and then I asked Mayor Di Natale that. I find it much more efficient to come back and utilize our free cash for these one-time expenditures. As we're trying to put together our budget in March and April, we're just not sure about the outcomes. And you're right, it would be easy just to add $120,000, but when you're working on a budget that is extremely complex, it's easier to come back to the council, because every year, the police department, because of personnel matters, we're returning significant amount of money back to the city in the form of free cash. I'm at a point now where I wholeheartedly agree with Mayor Di Natale. This is probably the most efficient way, and I think the auditor would agree with me as well. These are one-time expenditures, and if we have a year that we're a little bit tight on free cash, then I make a smaller appropriation towards automotive repair. There's nothing saying, we survived COVID without buying vehicles. It's not the optimum choice, but we survived it. And because this is one-time expenditures, I think this is probably the most efficient way to handle it.
Mr. Chair, may I ask the city auditor a question? Sir, is this a better way to doing it, instead of having a line item for him every year?
I think, as the chief has said, the fact that free cash is generally for one-time purchases and vehicles are one-time purchase. Would we like to put it in the budget? I'd love to put it in the budget, but if I put it in the budget, if the mayor puts it in the budget, then the mayor's going to have to make some cuts somewhere else in order for us to balance the budget. And this way we can move forward with a budget, and then as free cash is certified and as we know what wiggle room we have within the budget, we can buy the vehicles.
Even if we put one car in the budget as a line item?
Well, if you figure one vehicle, I think the chief said was 60,000.
Right.
Roughly. That's a position. Do you want somebody in the DPW, or do you want a vehicle?
He's got you on that one.
You all set?
I'm all set.
Well, I want to make something clear here, that this is the appropriate use of free cash. Well, this is not a free cash request. This is a transfer in the budget. Technically, this is budgeted. It's budgeted through our debt service line item account under reserve for other municipal purposes, capital expenses. Recall, until we build up our debt service to a level that we were at prior to the school, high school, and the fire station being paid off, we have a reserve set aside in our debt service to siphon off of in addition to our free cash for capital projects. So this is actually not free cash. This is a budgetary transfer. We put about $900,000 in there for small and medium-sized capital needs. This fits that bill. So technically, in this year, it is a budgeted item, but it's not specifically outlined as such for police vehicles. It could be for anything. To put it in the budget for police vehicles, forget the implications of a balanced budget, and we have to cut here to do this and that. It's just not necessary to me. Free cash is the right way to go about vehicle replacements, especially when you don't have an idea of what everything else is going to be like in the city, so you don't want to make a commitment in advance. I will say that prior to 2008, one of the things the city did change in its vehicle replacement practices, pre-2008, the city would borrow for vehicles. We would take out 5-year loans for new police cruisers that didn't last 5 years. So we were paying principal and interest on vehicles that were already in the scrap heap.
Right.
So as long as I've been on the council, that practice ceased, and for good reason. Now we use free cash. So I look at it that way from a historical perspective. We used to borrow for vehicles. No, that's, I don't know why we did it back then, but just a long line of things that we shouldn't have done a long time ago that we did for whatever reason. Now we're doing it more appropriately, but until we get to that debt service level that we're supposed to be at, We're going to continue to have probably this account be used for these kinds of purposes because they are one-time expenses, but they're also in the debt service budget to prop that budget up for when we actually do take out large-scale projects down the road like Crocker and the library and the like. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I was going to say something similar, actually, that having it in a reserve for capital expenses rather than a specific police cruiser line item allows us the flexibility to deal with potential unexpected eventualities. If some other, a DPW vehicle or a fire vehicle or something like that failed completely unexpectedly, then we could tell Chief Martineau, look, I'm sorry, we're only going to get you one cruiser this year because we have to buy this other thing. Whereas if not that we couldn't transfer it if it were specifically a cruiser line item, but it would be more, it's a lot more convenient to just have it for capital expenses in general and plan to spend it on cruisers. But if something comes up that we didn't think of, we can spend it on something else instead. And work with the chief to address his vehicle needs some other way.
Yeah. I'd like to make just one comment on Councilor Di Natale's statement, because I think it's important as we reflect on past practices. And in the last 6 years, there's been a commitment from Mayor Di Natale's office to continue to provide at least a couple of cruisers a year. I lived through those days when we would have to borrow, and the councilor would, sometimes it was up to $600,000 that we were borrowing money to replace all 7 cars at one time, or all 10 cars. And now we're into a loan, a 5 or 10 year loan, but more importantly, for 5 or 10 years, you have a fleet that is not representative of what we want to look like. It was beat up, it was dirty, it was dingy, you'd have hubcaps missing. Today, we have one of the cleanest fleets in central Massachusetts. The cruisers look sharp, the appearance is, it's like a uniform. That's the first appearance when a cruiser rolls up on a scene is, this is a professional organization. And kudos to the current administration for seeing that and continuing to at least be able to provide a couple of cruisers per year.
Are you looking for a raise tonight?
No, sir. We can take that as a suspension of the rules if you have. I have no problem with that.
The mayor's calling me right now.
I make a motion that we accept.
Second.
Motion made and accepted to accept 17821. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. 17921, in order that the city of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the American Rescue Plan Act funds available for projects in the approximate amount of $500,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to increase COVID-19 testing, vaccination, and contract tracing. That should probably say contact tracing, right? Not contract. Let's see here. No problem. A letter here from Mr. Curry to the mayor on September 28th states as follows. Please be advised that I am respectfully requesting an order to be directed to the city council to approve the request for an ARPA reserve fund in the amount of $500,000 for the purposes of expanding COVID-19 public health activities in the city of Fitchburg. Funding will be used to increase COVID-19 testing, increase COVID-19 vaccination rates by increasing access to the vaccine, and to incentivize receiving the vaccine using gift cards, and increase staffing on contact tracing activities to provide adequate tracking, surveillance, and to ensure compliance with isolation and quarantine orders to assist with preventing the spread. These activities will utilize collaborations where possible to minimize spending. Quarterly or more often if required, expenditure reports will be prepared and presented as necessary. More detailed information will also be provided as information becomes available. Director of Health, Curry.
Good evening, councilors. I just want to make it known that this isn't just a fun to go spending and have a good time. I'm actually hoping that we don't even have to use much of this fund, but the idea behind it is to, if opportunity arises, we can take advantage of that possibility and make something happen. And a good example of that right now is a collaboration that I have with the health department. Mark Health Alliance, Leominster, Community Health, CHC. We are looking to submit an application to the Department of Public Health. We hope that application will go out any day now. We are partnering with the city of Leominster to propose 2 testing sites in the city, ours being at the Mock site on Nursery Lane. It will be a drive-through testing site, and DPH will employ or provide the necessary employee to run the clinic, but we kind of just need to put the logistics together to make the whole thing work. And I have prepared a little bit of a budget. I hope you folks have a copy of that. I will go through that budget briefly and will explain those line items. The first line item is for public health nurses. I'm proposing to hire up to 5 as necessary. I would like to make it known that the State Contact Tracing Collaborative ends on November 30th. I'm sorry, it actually ends on December 31st, but they will stop taking cases November 30th. So that gives us 6 weeks from now to prepare a team to do proper contact tracing. So a little pressed for time there on that matter. Active cases presently, we have about 200 in the city. Those cases need to be interviewed. Those cases need to identify their contacts. Contacts need to be interviewed as well and ordered either quarantined or isolated depending on symptoms. It's a little bit of a time-consuming process, and I would not advise losing a handle on it because we will see a spread. As I mentioned earlier, the test site will be a huge advantage to the city. I don't know if anybody has tried to make any attempts at getting tested presently, but many of the facilities are 3 and 4 days out for appointments, or they require either symptoms or a doctor's note to be tested. So testing is an important part of public health to identify those cases, but testing is not readily available presently. This is the reason why we'd like to get this test site up and going. And those nurses will actively do contact tracing as well as provide assistance to the test site and vaccination sites. So we could regularly have all 3 events, possibly all in one day. The test site, sorry I'm jumping around a little bit, but the test site we're proposing would be up to 2 to 3 days during the week in the city. So moving on the budget, I would also provide these nurses some administrative assistant to hire a temporary position to do the data input associated necessary with vaccination. The state provides a computer website now. It used to be PrepMod, it's now Color. So each individual that's vaccinated, information needs to be submitted. It's a little bit of a time-consuming process. Down below, I am proposing to contract with an epidemiologist. The epidemiologist would be combined with other grants, including the regional grant, and the epidemiologist would sort of be on call for those nurses with difficult situations, determining the right time for a case to return out of quarantine. It gets a little technical. With the test site, moving on, we would propose to provide some police detail in the event. Sorry about that. In the event that we attract a lot of testers, we may run into the Nursery Lane parking lot is quite large, but we do have the potential to run into the streets. So we would be looking for police details or traffic assistance within the budget. The equipment line item next, basically supplying each nurse or temporary staff with a laptop necessary to do their job, do their contact tracing, go on the virtual network for communicable disease that the state provides. and it's basic computer equipment. The next item is $5,600 for basically office supplies, but it also includes, I would like to propose gift cards to incentivize those to get vaccinated. There is a program that came out today through DPH that they will supply some gift cards, so I'm hoping we can go in that direction, but I'd like to have a fallback in the ARPA budget if that's possible. Expenses, looking for nearly $50,000. The expenses would cover a tent at the nursery site, would also provide trash receptacles, portable bathrooms if necessary. It would also provide tent heaters in the event, and obviously we would rent this equipment or look for the cheapest option. And it would also provide signage at the test site and any vaccination site. The final line item is about a $10,000 line item, and basically the fire department assists us at vaccination clinics. It's important to have an EMT on site in case vaccination, any problems become, any experiences, some side effects from vaccination. So it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and it's nice to have an EMT on site. That is really a quick overview of a proposed budget, and like I said, it's very vague and basic. It is that way for a reason. It's sort of an as-needed, sort of a fallback. I do have quite a few applications in with the Department of Public Health for grant funding, so I'm hoping that, like I said earlier, that this be used as a fallback and that we utilize the grants designed for some of these items. But it's very important that we be prepared for contact tracing at the end of November.
Councilor Hughes.
Mr. Curry, does this money also include the testing kits?
Right now, we're hoping that we can utilize DPH testing equipment, but I do have in some line items in the equipment budget, in the event we do need to purchase test kits. Thank you for bringing that up. In the coming 2 weeks, we will be doing a test site in partnership with the city of Leominster. It'll be a saliva test site. We're looking for a site at the moment. I think we're going to be utilizing the Leominster Fitchburg Elks Club, and I have purchased saliva kits for that event. Those kits were $92,000 last year when I did purchase them. Hopefully the prices are much more reasonable, but I did include a small line item for test kits in the event we do need to purchase test kits. But that's not the ultimate goal.
Thank you. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. First, just because in conversations with various people, I've become somewhat sensitized to some of the concerns that people raise. I want to emphasize for the public that the adverse reactions occasionally experienced at vaccination clinics are almost exclusively allergic reactions to one of the inactive components in the vaccine solution. These are not harms caused by the vaccine. They're simply allergies to one of the things, to one of the substances, often egg protein or something, that is in the vial to stabilize it. It's relatively rare and easily treatable. No different than a food allergy or something. The one question I did have, though, is in the letter that Chairman DiNatale read, you mentioned something to do with surveillance to assure quarantine compliance. I don't see that in here, and I'm also wondering what sort of procedure that would entail.
Sure. Part of the public health nurse interviewing process, once a case is identified, we would follow up with that case. until they are released from quarantine. So that's a very important feature built in, that we can track these individuals to make sure that they're complying, or at least making an attempt to comply with quarantine, and if they don't, then at least we can identify ahead of time that where they've been and where they've potentially exposed someone else.
Okay, so when you say surveillance, you mean something more like
So the nurse would be
follow-up
an
and
interview,
monitoring?
sort of an interview, tracking and surveillance.
Right. I just wanted to,
Yeah.
because when I think surveillance, I think like putting a police detail on them to follow them around and make sure they don't go somewhere they're not supposed to go. And I was like, I don't see that in here anywhere. And no, I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure I fully understood, because I suspect I may get questions about
Keeping
it.
a
But-
good working relationship with the confirmed case is very important.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Thank you.
Council Bushman.
To talk about what he just talked about, what if Boschman doesn't want to, he comes down with the virus and you tell me to quarantine, and I go out into the general public? I'm using my name because you can't use different names. What happens then? What happens to that party? Does anything happen to that party?
Well, the party does receive a written order, a verbal and a written order. We're not in the business of going out tackling people and bringing them back home, but we would take legal steps against that person, whether it be an immediate or court order, we would take certain legal steps. There could be the issuance of a fine. Obviously, I don't have a great answer for that question. But
Okay.
the idea here is to get compliance. There's always going to be non-compliance.
I understand.
The best we can do is direct them, educate them, and try to keep them within compliance.
Okay. My question is, since you're the Board of Health Director, and basically the mayor and everybody else listens to what you have to say, how come you haven't called it a mandate for all city employees to get vaccinated, whereas they're dealing with the public 24 hours a day?
Council, I don't think that has anything to do with this discussion.
Well, he's trying to get a hold on COVID. Am I right or wrong?
Well, but that's not part of this budget.
It's 500. The reason why we're giving him $500,000 so he can get a hold of it. So you're telling me if this is not, then this 500,000 is irrelevant. You're telling me. If I can't ask the question why he
Say
doesn't
the
mandate,
500,000 was irrelevant. I'm saying that is a question outside of the scope of what he's presenting to us.
he's doing it to get tracing, so people go and get vaccinated. They come to get tested and everything else. And my question to him is a very simple one, because he already told us when he sat right here that 50% of the police department gets shots and 75% of the fire department gets shots. And I don't know how many from this.
The reason why I interjected is because that is a policy decision between the mayor, the staff, the unions. I mean, we have nothing to do with that. That's why I brought that up. But, I mean, would this be germane to the subject?
Honestly,
I'm deferring to my resident expert over here on.
Honestly, I think it could be insofar as, in order to approve a budget for a COVID mitigation strategy, we would need to decide for ourselves whether we believe that it is an optimal strategy.
All right, I'll allow the question. Yep.
So, Counselor, I believe, and I can make a mandate and act as the Board of Health, but there is a health department that would have to back me up within a certain amount of time. So there would have to be a unanimous vote to implement such a mandate. And I can't really speak for the board, but I can tell you that there really isn't a, I'm trying to put it the right way. There isn't a goal here to force people to do something. The goal is to educate them and try and figure out why they're not doing so, why they're not getting vaccinated. You know, what's the reason, and try to provide some education to it. it's not a world to force you to do something. If I can appreciate the fact that someone doesn't want to be vaccinated, that's a decision you can make.
I understand that, because I do know the reason why I'm asking all these questions, is I just got done talking to a friend of mine tonight, and he came down with COVID, and he got very, very sick. He was on life support, ventilators to make it through, and he made it through. And he said, this is no joke. This is not what everybody thinks it is. And that's the only reason why I don't understand why. Even the public, even the people that deal with the public 24 hours a day are hesitant to get the shot. I don't understand. It doesn't bring logic to my brains. But anyway, but the only thing on this whole thing, I'm going to support your program, but I have a hard time because I really believe the government's sending a wrong message here when you offer gifts and card incentives. So I should have just waited until the government came back and said, I'm going to give you something to go get the shot. We're giving them a free shot. We're giving them free tests. We're giving them everything for free. I mean, somebody's going to pay for it. Mm-hmm. But yet, we also now want to give them a gift card. I have a very hard time with that. I know it's very small.
Yeah.
But what are we sending to the public? What are we sending for a message to the other people out there? Wait the next time? Don't get it, because if we hold off long enough, we'll get a gift card too. That's the only thing I have a hard time with. I'm very tight with money, I'll be honest with you. I don't like to give it away. I work too hard. I know it's the government's money, but I'm part of the government.
Right.
And
So the state program, just to comment on your question, the state program gift card allows folks to get a booster and still collect the gift card. Now, I don't really support that direction, but if that's what it takes to get people to get a booster within the next year or so, so be it. But I think the gift card would be directed towards low-income folks that are struggling with COVID clusters in their neighborhood, in their apartment buildings, that just for whatever reason aren't getting vaccinated. That's where the idea is to be directed.
and you said we're going to deal with Mark, right? You said Mark?
Mark will be a partner in the testing site, and Mark has been a partner with us since day one. They were instrumental in helping us vaccinate our equity folks.
Okay.
We had about 4,000 or 5,000 doses issued at a Mark site on Airport Road.
Okay. All right. That's the name for me, Marcus. Thank you very much, sir.
Councilor Zarella?
Thank you. I just want to note the amount that we're talking about for these gift cards. Am I correct in thinking it's fairly small? What kinds of numbers?
The state is $25 a gift card.
Okay, so $25. So if you're someone like me who saw the value in the vaccine to begin with,
I did.
and you're not going to hold off and make yourself less safe for several months in hopes of getting $25, right?
No, I want to live.
Exactly. So if you're someone who would have gotten the vaccine anyway, you're not going to hold out for the $25 gift card. Whereas if you're someone who isn't actively opposed to it, but just doesn't really care enough to waste their time, what they see as wasting their time going and getting it, if you tell them, hey, take 20 minutes out of your day, you get $25, that's a pretty good hourly rate, right? That might be the little bit of incentive that pushes them past that bit of reluctance and gets them to get the vaccine, which is good for all of us then, because the closer we get to those critical thresholds, the closer we get to wiping this out.
Yeah. Not to mention, it does put us in contact, if that's the reason why they're reaching out.
Marcus, one more question.
I got Councilor Hughes.
Go ahead, yes.
Councilor Hughes.
Thank you. Mr. Curry, in terms of policy, is it your decision to implement a mask mandate, or would it have to come from the mayor?
A mask mandate could come from the Board of Health. It could also come from the mayor if it pertained to city employees.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel Boschman?
Final question. You're talking about there's no place to get tested and that. CVS...
I didn't say no place,
Right.
Counselor. I said
Oh.
it's very difficult right now.
CVS, like I told you before, still gives tests as far as I know. I should have went up there before I came here. And you can walk in there and get tested and leave. And just because I know somebody that did go, and that's where they had to go to get tested. And so I don't understand why we're not also using Walgreens and CVS as the contact places to go and get tested and all that.
In fact, I was approached by a city employee today that wanted to go to CVS and couldn't get an appointment till Thursday.
Oh, is that right?
So you might have hit it at the right time. I don't know, but 10,000 tests between two cities in a time period in early September. It just doesn't seem like we're really testing enough out there to get to the root cause and stop the spread.
All right.
I mean, we're talking 80,000 people between Fitchburg and Leominster, and 10,000 tests in a 2-week period, and in appointment times, 3 and 4 days after you're looking for a test. I mean, things could change, things could improve. If testing is no longer a serious need, then we concentrate on vaccination or contact tracing or whatever it takes. I mean, the nurses are very flexible and can do all three, which is the ideal situation.
Okay. I make sorry.
Counsel Zarella?
As someone who recently got a test at CVS, negative, just so everyone knows. But as someone who recently got a test at CVS about a week and a half ago or so, I can say they may have them on a walk-in basis, like a walk-in at a barber shop, where if they can squeeze you in, they will. But they are telling people to call ahead and schedule an appointment, and they are usually scheduling several days out. I got mine, I think, about 3 days after I scheduled it.
Okay. All right.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Curry, that I thank you and appreciate your answer on the mandates. I couldn't agree more with you. With that said, it's up to the committee here on the motion. Oh, there's no motion yet.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 17921. Oh, speaking on the motion, my apologies. May I ask, please, if that motion can be removed? I forgot one question.
Oh, I won't remove it. Go ahead.
Can I have that removed? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Auditor Brooks, since this is going to be treated like its own budget, if you will, is there going to be a section carved out in the status E reports we get monthly that shows this, something similar to this, and by way of expenditures?
So the ARPA is its own fund, Fund 19, and it will be included under the mayor's grants and other spending, mayor's office. So it'll be near the front of the report.
Will it be one line item, or?
There's currently a line item that shows $31 million available for projects. When this is approved, we'll set up a line item for this project of $500,000. I'll work with Mr. Curry to split it between personal services and expenses.
Okay, thank you. That's
And
all I wanted to know.
then if he needs additional funding, we can add funding to it. If we get to if in 3 months the COVID goes away and everything is back to the old normal, and he doesn't need it, we can close it out back to the $31 million.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm all set.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 17921. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilors?
Motion made and
Thank
seconded
you,
to
Steve. I
adjourn.
appreciate everything you've done.
Without any, if there are no comments on that, I will take unanimous consent on the adjournment. Thank you.